Hello, it's news for Scotland. For a week ending the 12th of January 2024, this is our first podcast of the year. Thanks for joining me. I'm Hugh Stewart. Now, in a few minutes, in about 15 minutes and to be exact, I'll talk about some of today's issues with another member of the team, Jeanette Hill. She's waiting for you. But just before then, I'm going to go over Scotland's quick news stories for this week. It's news where we are, and thanks for being with me. And the first story up this week, the Scottish Government announces its conversion therapy ban. With Parliament back earlier this week, the Scottish Government announced consultation on a new bill to ban so-called conversion therapy in Scotland. Conversion practices are described by the Scottish Government as anything which seeks to change or suppress a person's sexual orientation or sexual identity. The proposed legislation seeks to prevent and respond to harmful acts while protecting existing freedoms, including freedom of speech, religion and belief. If a proposed bill becomes law, it may ban acts such as delivering counselling or therapy which aims to change or suppress a person's same-sex attraction. This is sometimes referred to as praying away the gay. Equality Minister Emma Roddick said that these damaging and destructive acts still happen today and have no place in Scotland, although she did not offer any examples. Criticising the proposals, former MSP Joan McAlpine said on Times Radio that the Scottish Government is confusing anti-gay conversion with giving advice to people confused about their gender identity. Referring to the CAST report, that was an investigation into the Tavistock Gender Service in England, Ms McAlpine said that many of Tavistock's young male patients had experienced other conditions such as autism or had been the victims of sexual mistreatment before they started complaining about gender dysphoria. She also added that the majority, in fact she said over 80% of the young females presented for treatment were in fact same-sex attracted. The gender treatment which used to be offered by this now closed clinic could therefore be described as transing the gay away. The consultation period is open now. If you have any comments to the Scottish Government, it runs until the 2nd of April, so get in touch. The Scottish Government website has details of how you can influence this discussion. And also from the Scottish Government, if you have a job, there may still be benefits you can claim. The Scottish Government this week reminded people that some benefits are available to people in work. Many payments now delivered by Social Security Scotland are aimed at low-income families. 1 in 3 people getting universal credit are in work, and people searching for their first job can apply to the Job Start payment to help with the costs of getting established in your career. The Best Start scheme also has a range of benefits available to families with young children, such as the Best Start Foods and other grants. Again, details are on the Scottish Government news pages. 2024, welcome to the year of democracy. Almost half of the human race will go to the polls this year, with elections due in India, America, the European Union and the United Kingdom. Vladimir Putin is also running for president again and is the bookies' favourite in Russia. In Scotland, party leaders Humza Yousaf for the SNP and Anas Sarwar for Scottish Labour opened their general election campaigns earlier on this week. Yousaf was speaking at Glasgow University and Sarwar in the now Labour constituency of Rutherglen. In his speech, Scottish Labour leader took on the idea that Scottish votes don't matter. UK party leader Sir Keir Starmer has often said that the road to Downing Street goes through Scotland. With recent opinion polls showing UK Labour miles ahead of Sunak's Conservatives, however, a Labour landslide looks very likely simply with English votes. Sarwar, however, argued that electing Scottish Labour MPs won't just be about getting rid of the Tory government, but also making sure that Scotland has a voice at the heart of the next UK Labour government. He said, after a decade of SNP MPs shouting at Westminster with nothing to show for it, it's about demonstrating how Scotland's voice must be more than just a protest. For the SNP, First Minister Humza Yousaf focused on the UK economy and its dismal record of growth in recent years, saying that under devolution, damaging economic trends have become, as he put it, hardwired into the UK and Scotland. Saying that the UK is a poor man of northwestern Europe, Yousaf argued that Scotland could chart a different course with independence. A UK-wide opinion poll from the first week in January shows Labour on 46% and the Conservatives on 22%. The Reform Party, based on the former Brexit Party, is on 9%, and it's likely most of those votes will cross over from Conservatives. So unless anything drastic changes in the next few months, it looks certain to be victory for Labour. In Scotland, there has been no polling that we know of at News for Scotland, not since November, but the Scottish subsample of this UK poll shows the SNP and Labour neck and neck at 33%, with the Conservatives on 14%. We can't put too much weight on that as the sample will be small, possibly around 100 voters, but it could spell bad news for both the SNP and the Tories here. OK, should we ban the bully dogs? There's an update on this coming later anyway, but I'm going to report on what was discussed in the Scottish Parliament at the start of this week. Following fatal attacks on people by the XL bully breed, these dogs were banned in England and Wales on the 31st of December last year. The Scottish SPCA does not support a ban, but the Scottish Government was under pressure to stop the movement of these dogs north of the border. So here's a debate earlier this week on Tuesday in the Scottish Parliament between Jamie Green of the Scottish Conservative Party and the Minister for Community Safety, Siobhan Brown.
Officer, to ask the Scottish Government whether it will reconsider its position on further regulating the ownership of American XL bully dogs in Scotland in light of reports that widespread rehoming from England to Scotland is raising public safety and animal welfare concerns.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government is concerned to hear reports of XL bully dogs being moved to Scotland for rehoming. I've made it clear to the UK Government, and there should be no impact to Scotland as a consequence of the policy that's been implemented. The UK Government's response stated that if an XL bully owner in England and Wales travelled to Scotland and sold or otherwise transferred or abandoned the dog to someone in Scotland, it is unlikely to be an offence. The criminal law should provide clarity on whether an offence has been committed or not, and the unintended consequences of the UK Government's policy is that we're now seeing an influx of XL bully dogs coming to Scotland. It is important to ensure Scotland does not become a safe haven or a dumping ground for the XL bully dogs from England and Wales. And I can confirm to Jamie Green and the Chamber that in light of recent events, ministers are urgently reviewing the policy on XL bully dogs, and public safety will be paramount in our deliberations, and a timetable for any policy change will be updated to Parliament imminently.
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The unintended consequences we're seeing are not a result of UK legislation, but as a result of this Scottish Government failing to take action, leading to the situation where there is huge amount of anecdotal evidence of rehoming across the border into Scotland. There's an online Facebook group which has over 20,000 members where people are discussing this very issue day in, day out. Now, I understand they're very well-meaning. As an animal lover, I understand the sentiments behind some of this rehoming, but we do not understand the full consequences of what will happen. The First Minister was very clear to the media yesterday when he said, "I think it is important for us to make very clear that Scotland is not a safe haven for XL bully dogs." I agree with him, Minister. So will the Minister now explain to the public what action this Scottish Government will take to ensure that the rhetoric on this is followed by action?
OK, that was in the Scottish Parliament on Tuesday. Jamie Green for the Scottish Conservatives. Well, we found out as we made this programme the action that the Scottish Government decided to take, in fact, was to support the ban south of the borders. So the same restrictions on this breed in England are going to be brought in Scotland. Moves to put this measure to Parliament could begin as soon as next week. OK, next interesting story we found this week. Two stories actually about Scottish high-tech space sector. Firstly, researchers at Glasgow University are developing a rocket engine which eats itself. The autophage engine uses waste heat from combustion to gradually burn parts of its structure, both to improve efficiency by turning it into fuel and also to reduce the amount of space debris left over. The fuselage, made of a type of plastic, can supply up to 1/5 of the total fuel needed. This breakthrough leaves more room for an economic payload. Meanwhile, Scottish industry insiders have called for more clarity and leadership from the UK and Scottish governments in regulating and promoting the growing space industry here. Scott Hammond, Deputy Chief Executive of Saxiford Spaceport in Shetland, spoke to a UK Parliamentary Committee this Monday, pointing out that space regulations are written in London while planning permission and the use of our waters is reserved to Scotland. Mr Hammond called for a senior politician to take charge of the whole sector. At the London meeting on Monday, the German rocket firm High Impulse said that suborbital launches could begin from Shetland this August, with full orbital flights planned for 2025. Now let's look at the post office scandal in Scotland. The Post Office Horizon computer scandal, which saw hundreds of innocent post office staff convicted of thefts which did not happen, has a different Scottish aspect. In England and Wales, the Post Office itself was able to bring cases to court as a prosecuting authority. In Scotland, however, the Post Office does not have this power, so anyone falsely accused was up against our own Procurator Fiscal Service and the Crown Office. The exact number of postmasters wrongly accused here is not public, but the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission did write to 73 potential victims in 2020. Up to last December, only 16 people came forward to have their cases looked at again, and 6 were given permission to make an appeal, and so far only 2 in Scotland have had their convictions overturned. The Scottish Parliament discussed this miscarriage of justice in Parliament again on Tuesday a couple of days ago, and raising the question was Scottish Labour MSP Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Happy New Year to you and everyone in the Chamber. To ask the Scottish Government what action it can take to ensure that all people who were potentially wrongfully convicted as a result of the reported Horizon scandal are supported in coming forward if they wish for their conviction to be overturned.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, the Horizon scandal is rightly causing great concern, and it is important to first of all recognise the tireless work of campaigners who have led efforts for justice. Anyone wrongly convicted as a result of the Horizon scandal should have their conviction reversed and be entitled to compensation. The Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission have already referred 7 cases back to the Appeal Court for a fresh appeal, and 2 of these have had their convictions overturned on appeal so far. We are, however, looking at what more can be done. We are looking at the idea of a pardon scheme. But I am conscious that the UK Government have made a compensation scheme that requires a conviction to be reversed by an appeal court, and that's a requirement before you can be in receipt of compensation. I have therefore today written to the UK Secretary of State for Justice to ask for a meeting to discuss how best we can work together and ensure that anyone wrongly convicted as a result of the Horizon scandal can have their conviction reversed and still be entitled to compensation.
OK, since that debate on Tuesday, we found, of course, that UK Prime Minister Sunak did in fact announce that the Westminster Parliament would legislate to clear all postmasters of culpability and to hasten the compensation payments. And yesterday, Wednesday, Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf announced that the same would apply here, probably following what's known as a legislative consent motion to the Scottish Parliament, which would authorise new laws south of the border to apply here too. This morning in Holyrood, Douglas Ross of the Scottish Conservatives asked for more information about the role of prosecutors in Scotland. Mr Ross said that the Crown Office was aware of problems with the Horizon IT evidence back in 2013, and Mr Ross urged the Lord Advocate, the head of the Crown Office, to come to the Holyrood Parliament and take questions from MSPs, and as Sarwar for Scottish Labour backed this call. First Minister Yousaf said that there were legitimate questions to be asked, and the Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain was willing to come to Parliament. I'll discuss more on this with Jeanette Hill of the News for Scotland team in a few minutes after this roundup. But next story is on Scottish land reform. Andy Whiteman, land reform campaigner and former MSP, has announced this week his latest update to the continuing effort to answer the question of who owns Scotland. The website whoownscotland.org shows that the ownership of 70% of Scotland's total area can now be identified, still leaving a substantial area which we, the people and the government, don't know much about. Scotland is unusual in having no restrictions on how much land an individual or a company can own. Also, there is no requirement for owners to actually live here. This leads to the fact that much of Scotland is owned overseas, but we can't easily find out who the owners are. In his latest update, Whiteman has identified another 50 holdings covering an extra 51,000 acres. The Scottish Land Commission, chaired by former Government Minister Mike Russell, has plans to draft a bill on land reform to be debated in the Scottish Parliament during the current session, which means before 2026. Now, looking back at 2023, did you think it was hot? Well, it was. The EU's Copernicus Centre has confirmed that 2023 was the hottest year on record, with temperatures close to the United Nations limit of plus 1.5 degrees compared with pre-industrial times. The findings are that surface air temperatures broke several global records in 2023, and as surface sea temperatures were high, even taking into account the El Niño effect. In 23, the global mean temperature was 14.98 degrees, which is 0.17 of a degree more than the previous high of 2016. Last year was therefore 0.6 of a degree higher than the average from the 1990s up to 2020, and it's 1.48 degrees above the estimate for the period of 1850 up to 1900, which is the reference period for the pre-industrial time. Copernicus researchers also note that by this February next month, it's probable that the 1.5 degree limit will be breached over the preceding 12 months. The report published this week also notes record minima in sea ice both in the Arctic and Antarctic, last February showing the lowest amounts of sea ice yet recorded. Caleb One Tempo of the Copernicus Climate Change Service said that we now have departed from the climate in which our civilization developed, and that we need to urgently decarbonise our economy and prepare for the future. Mauro Facchini, the head of Earth Observation for the EU Commission, said of the latest data that they knew they were not going to expect good news, and he reminded us that the EU has agreed emissions reductions of 55% by 2030, only 6 years away. More information on climate.copernicus.eu. OK, still in Europe, COVID and flu hit Spain. The Spanish authorities announced this Monday that face masks are again compulsory in hospitals as cases of flu and COVID-19 rose across the country. 5 regions of Spain had already announced the reintroduction of masks, with one region also proposing to include pharmacies. Andalucía was reluctant to take part, but the Minister of Health, Mónica García, was reportedly giving all regions 2 days to respond to her proposals. In the last week of 2023, there were 4,383 cases of flu for every 100,000 of the Spanish population, putting hospitals under pressure. COVID figures are no longer routinely published in Scotland, but information is available from Public Health Scotland. In its survey of respiratory diseases, their website this week shows 931 cases of COVID at the end of December, and that's 17 out of every 100,000 of the population. Of that 931, 375 require hospital treatment. That was by the week ending the 31st of December. OK, that's our quick news roundup for this week, and I'll be back next week with the latest news for Scotland. And so for the rest of this podcast, I'll discuss some of those stories with Jeanette Hill. Right, so we'll just go over some of those stories. We began today talking about the elections. As we know, the election campaign has started, although we have no idea when the election is going to be. According to Rishi Sunak, he's got no idea when he is going to call it either. So Keir Starmer made his speeches last week, and this week, I think on Monday it was, both Anas Sarwar and Humza Yousaf really have started the election campaign, haven't they? And that's running now. It's election year. Now, what do you think? I started off on the news roundup earlier on with this story about the question, does Labour need Scotland? Now, there's 2 ways of looking at that. Arithmetically, out of the 650 MPs in London, there's 59, I think, in Scotland. So if Starmer wins a kind of a landslide, which it looks like, then arithmetically he doesn't need Scotland, does he?
No, he doesn't need Scotland, but he probably does. You know, he doesn't need it numerically, but he does need it in every other way, really, doesn't he? Really, to convince the populace of the UK that Labour is the way forward. For me, for years, I always thought Labour had died in Scotland. Really, Labour's certainly main body of support seems to have died in Scotland, but there seems to be in Rutherglen a resurgence. We will see. I'm interested in what Anas Sarwar is going to say about that. Yeah, maybe they'll like to talk to us about it here.
I'll ask him.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's making the point that you can't really have a one nation Labour Party, if you like, if one of the major constituents of the nation isn't there. He's contrasting it really to the Conservatives, isn't he? For years, the Conservatives had one MP in Scotland, and so they weren't really representing the UK at all. So he's saying under Labour that'll be more unifying. That's the big message, isn't it?
Yeah, that is his message, and he seems to be saying send back Labour MPs to Westminster because they will have more clout in a Labour government, and it's an argument, isn't it? there is some sort of point there. I mean, much as I quite liked what a lot of the SNP MPs said in Westminster, you did think, was anybody actually listening to them, because they didn't have any say in the government. Yeah.
Yeah, they're always outsiders. I suppose, really, when you look ahead, I'm really looking ahead to the next elections in Scotland, because in 2026, when we have to elect a Holyrood
Yes.
Parliament, you wonder if any kind of storm or bounce will continue, because by that time, Labour government might be pretty unpopular. It'll be mid-term then, won't it?
Well, yeah, if Keir is going along with the policies that he's currently saying, I can't imagine he's going to be particularly popular in a lot of areas of Scotland. Yes, it does seem more of the same, but lots of people seem to be saying, sort of like Tory light, if you like.
Well, the big thing about that is that they're promising to do nothing.
Yes,
they're saying, they're getting in their excuse early. They're saying there's no money.
Yeah.
The Tories have bankrupted the country, which is actually probably bad economics.
Yes.
Because if you're a sovereign country, which Britain is and Scotland is not, they own the Bank of England.
they can make money.
£1 trillion.
Absolutely,
Yeah, they can do it tomorrow.
And they have plenty of there's plenty of people out there, Positive Money, all sorts of people that the trade union movement saying there's lots of ways of getting money into this country. That we have a lot of money, actually. We're a wealthy country, but what we do is we don't distribute it like we should. And there's certainly wealth tax, like we've talked about before. There's lots of ways of getting significant more money. So it's a bit of an austerity lie that Corbyn and his lot sort of demolished, really, didn't they? The lie of austerity, that we do not need that style of economic policies. We can't have.
It is, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that develops. Will the Labour support for Labour hang together if they are actually just promising austerity, or will other elements within Labour begin to say, no, it's time to, you have to put money into the economy?
Yes.
They're talking about growth, aren't
Yeah,
they? It's
yeah.
growth. How are you going to get growth if you don't inject some money into the economy? They've said growth. Anna Saber also said last week, vote for Labour and we'll get growth. How?
Yeah,
How, Anna?
yeah,
How do you
exactly.
do that?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they haven't answered that part.
Well, just before we move on to the next topic, the other thing I mentioned in the head of the programme was about the latest opinion poll. Now, there are no opinion polls in Scotland. The trouble is you have to wait for maybe 2 or 3 a year. And when a UK opinion poll comes out, it's probably got about 100 people in Scotland. So that's not much to go on. But that last one shows Labour and SNP neck and neck. Do you think if you were an SNP candidate, do you think you should be worried?
I don't know. It's really. I'm finding it quite tricky, because I can't see that people will go back overwhelmingly to vote for Labour in Scotland. We have been so disappointed by many in the past, but the SNP has lost some support, obviously, for a variety of different reasons. Yeah, so it's impossible. I can see why it's neck and neck. It's really hard to tell, I think.
And of course, don't forget it's a tiny sample,
Yes.
so we don't know. But certainly, the SNP have lost a lot of ground in the last year or two. So that's Labour are definitely very confident. They sound really confident in Scotland. Well, we'll find out, won't we? Okay, we'll just move on. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more about the UK election, whenever it's called. Now, let's move on to two big controversial issues this week, three really, I suppose. We've got the conversion therapy ban we'll talk about in a minute. We've got, of course, the continuous repercussions from the post office scandal. But let's first look at the dangerous dogs issue. This is not the first time a breed of dogs has been banned. So, of course, the XL Bully dogs were banned in England after, I think, 2 fatalities. Is that right?
Yes,
Two
I think so,
people, I think, mauled and actually
yeah.
killed. So UK government, and that means England and Wales, banned them straight away. The Scottish government, I think, were listening to people like the SSPCA, and they were saying it's not the dogs, it's bad owners.
Yes.
If you actually treat these dogs properly, there's nothing wrong with them. So the Scottish government was reluctant to bring in that ban here, but I think they've been pushed into it, haven't they, because of the illegal immigrants.
The transfer. That's the fear of that people will just come up to Scotland to sell their dogs or whatever they're doing with them. Yeah, but I am very sympathetic to the SPCA approach, because I've had friends who've rescued German Shepherds that were supposed to be dangerous, nasty dogs, and they have rescued them, trained them beautifully, and I've had one for a weekend, and he's a big baby, sleeps at the bottom of your bed, and he was the one that was going to be put down. He's like a big bear, but because she, in particular, she is absolutely ace at training them, the dogs become like they should be, beta. They know who their alpha is and they do what they're told. So I agree with their idea that it's the owners. But my problem is that people who maybe are attracted to owning these bully dogs may well be the people who you definitely do not want to own them, and who are not able to control them the way that they should be. So they need something. Whether I don't know what the procedure is. They have to be muzzled in public, don't they? They have to be licensed, one strike and you're out kind of stuff. That probably all of that is true, like they do with pit bulls in America. America have got all this whole thing where people have to have on their home insurance, sort of extra bit added for their dog insurance if their dog gets out and bites somebody. But for many house insurers, they will not insure you for a pit bull because there's so many attacks from pit bulls.
No, I didn't know that.
They're very popular in America, pit bulls, and I do have a cousin in America who's got one, and it's perfectly sweet dog if it's well controlled. But it's always the same. Whatever dog you've got, it's about the handler. Somebody has to be in control of that dog. Yeah.
Well, I think that was a position the Scottish government had initially, but they've had to match the rules south of the border just to stop the cross-border traffic. I think that's what's happened.
Yeah.
Now let's look on to the next story. It was announced right at the start of this week by the Scottish government that they are going to proceed with an old Green Party policy. I mean, it's one that they've been trying to do for years. It's called the conversion therapy ban. Yeah. And incidentally, that was supposed to be a ban in UK. I think the Conservative government said 5 years ago they were going to do it, but they never got round to it. Have people looked at it and thought, no, we don't want to handle that, it's too controversial?
Or have they thought it's not really an issue? Because, I mean, you only have legislation on something that's an issue. Is it really? I know it was a fair, serious issue in America, but was it an issue here? I mean, it's interesting in your report on it, you actually said that no examples were given of conversion therapy operating in Scotland. I mean, we should maybe say what conversion therapy is. It's trying to convert people against their sexuality, usually towards heterosexuality, away from homosexuality, and it's often thought about as a religious thing, isn't it? It's often thought about in terms of a church of some kind that's pushing this idea that it's sinful to be gay, so pushing against it. And obviously, lots of people in any kind of reasonable Western democracy would say that's not on. We're not having that, especially if it's operating on people who are vulnerable, children or people with mental health conditions or whatever. And it certainly can make people feel very ill if you're being forced into that kind of so-called therapy. I wouldn't call it therapy at all.
Well, I did use the phrase pray the gay away. That was the expression that was used in the religious thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, totally. But our concern, I think, Hugh, is what you were saying, and other people have said similar, is the Scottish government have given no examples of that type of conversion therapy operating in Scotland. So what's it about? And is it a sort of side door for saying you can't counsel people, especially youngsters, who are coming forth for changing their gender? And to me, if that's what they're legislating against, then I would be very unhappy with that, because I think it's perfectly reasonable to have counselling before you, as long as it's it's not some wee local church doing counselling. It's your proper, you're a proper educational psychologist, your proper psychology, counselling, mental health services, who are giving some sort of counselling to somebody before they change their gender, because it's such a dramatic and physical thing to do to somebody, isn't it? To me, it would be a bit, not right. And even maybe you could challenge it in terms of children's rights and human rights if you're not giving somebody some sort of opportunity to discuss this with somebody outside their family, say.
So, as it gets discussed in Parliament, we don't know when it's going
Yeah.
to be introduced. By the way, the timetable is that the Scottish Government has this week announced a consultation. And so, if you have views, write to the Scottish Government. You can find it on the website.
Yeah.
And that consultation is open until the 2nd of April.
Yes.
And then we have to see what exactly is in the bill. Will they make it illegal for people to actually question a child's what they call gender identity?
Yeah,
So if a girl says, "I'm now a boy,"
Yeah.
have you now got to say, "Yes, you're a boy"? What will I call you? Are you Jeremy? Are you
Yeah.
Simon? If you question that, are you then going to be a criminal? So I suppose it's in the detail, but obviously a lot of people, I know a lot of people who will be sort of responding to that consultation,
Yes.
and they'll be saying, you have to have free discussion.
Mhm.
You have to let children have time to think.
Yes.
And anyway, I've read a lot of people say that children who say, "Yes, I'm not really a boy, I'm a girl," you just let it happen, and then a couple of years later they've forgotten all about it.
Yeah, that's
Time to think.
I mean, that's definitely what we used to say. You know, I used to work in nurseries, and we used to have I can't remember who it was. Some psychologist came up with the idea which called gender constancy, whereas young children used to always say, "When I grow up, I'm going to be like little boy." I remember particularly saying, "And when I grow up, I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to grow a baby, and I'm going to be a mother." And you just let him discuss it. He was only 4. You weren't immediately saying, "Now we have to change your gender." We wouldn't even think about it. We'd just say he's experimenting with the idea of gender. And the old feminists, we used to say, let children let gender be fluid in terms of boys can play, build the kitchen, whatever. Girls can play football. We would never even contemplate the idea of saying to somebody, "You're the wrong gender because you are choosing different, gender constructs, if you like, gender ideas."
Different stereotypes, if you like.
Yeah,
It's very
challenging the
stereotypical.
stereotype of what a boy can be and what a girl can be. But that's not the issue. The issue is the Scottish Government trying to shut down counselling on the reasonable counselling. We're not talking about anybody can set up and say, "Oh, I want a counselling." We talk about proper mental health services or educational psychology services, counselling children who are going through that process. If that is the case, then I hope it isn't. I'm thinking they're too sensible for that. But if it is, then that is an issue.
Okay, well, all that's going to be discussed,
Yeah.
and of course, Labour has to make their mind up.
Yeah.
Are they, to what extent is Labour going to kind of swallow the idea that gender is different to your sex? Or to what extent is Labour going to allow people to have open discussion without the fear that they're going to be prosecuted? That's what some people have said already.
Yeah.
Try to talk your boy out of being a girl, and you're going to go to jail for 7 years. Now that's what some of the Tory papers are saying. So let's hope, as you said, common sense prevails. And they don't let something
I
like
can't
that
see that the Scottish Government would push that. Surely not.
Well, let's hope not. Okay, so that's the consultation open, and it will be discussed in Parliament somewhere during this year. Right, so the final thing we'll talk about today, Jeanette, of course, is the continuing story of the Horizon scandals, which I think everybody knows about the details of that by now. But something I did not know until I watched Mr. Bates against the Post Office is that the PO in England is a prosecuting authority.
Yes, I don't
They
know
could
that.
actually
No.
take you to court. I suppose it's like the Customs and Excise.
Yeah.
They can just take you to court for not paying your VAT. They don't need to make a complaint to the cops first.
I-
But that does not apply in Scotland. Did you know
Well,
that?
no, I
In
didn't know.
Scotland,
I didn't know it didn't apply in Scotland, though. That's good to know. Really.
So it's our own if you were a
Yeah.
postmaster accused and
Yeah.
jailed in Scotland, and I don't know how many were, because there doesn't seem
I
to
think
be
it's
much
over
information
100.
on
I
it.
think I read that it was over 100.
I mean, 100 prosecuted or jailed?
100 who actually seems to have criminal convictions, because I think the Scottish Government are asking people to come forward to say, because so many of them have not asked for appeal. I understand why, because they think, it's going to cost me more money and I've got no money to pay my lawyers and whatever to go for an appeal. But I think so many of them haven't come forward so they're asking them to come forward and they're going to relook at their cases eventually. Thank goodness for that. But what my concern is, surely any police sort of, looking into those cases, the first thing they would say is, so let's look at where's the money. They would look everywhere to see if they could find the money, and if they couldn't find the money, they would say there's no evidence. So I'm concerned if our procurators at Fiscals put that forward, then where was the evidence?
Well, another interesting thing I just discovered yesterday when looking at Andrew Tickell, who's a lawyer, well, he's a legal theorist at Glasgow Caledonian University. Now, Tickell found some very interesting stuff from the inquiry, which all this time since last September has been going on in London. And he found that the lawyer at the time, the lawyer who was in charge of prosecutions for PO, was, in I think 2014, he was sent to Scotland because he'd heard some rumours that something in Scotland wasn't quite on script. He'd heard that Procurator Fiscals in Scotland were questioning the evidence.
Right.
So this lawyer was sent up to, and it says it's very unclear in the minutes, but he heard there was a problem north of the border. He went up there to sort it out.
Maybe that's
So
why
it's
we
as if
suddenly got these predictions. Yeah.
Well, that's what Tickell's wondering. We don't know, but he's saying, were the Scottish prosecutors, and there was the Crown Office and the Fiscals, were the Scottish people saying, I don't think this evidence is very reliable, I don't think we can proceed?
It's completely
And
not
did this guy
reliable,
come up
yeah.
and say, yes, it's okay, you must prosecute? So we don't really know what happened then.
Absolutely, I can understand why, because it's the whole weight of the government against you. You could understand that it would be quite. You'd really have to be pretty strong to stand up, whether it's a procurator fiscal or whatever, to stand up against and say no, because the whole weight, isn't it, of the government is behind the post office, and as people said in that play. How could you take them on? They have the power to appeal and appeal and appeal until you have no money or you die. To the ordinary people have no money left, or they die with the stress of it. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, there's cases of that before.
Yeah.
I don't know any lawyers here, but we do have this suspicion that when a big corporation is facing litigation, the first thing you have to do is to keep it talking, keep it going for years and years and years, because one by one, your customer, your complainants will either die or run out of money. That seems to be the way you handle it.
That's why it's horrible for them. They ended up in that play showing that they ended up with 20,000, and some of them had lost absolutely everything. Horrific. But that's why the lawyers settled, because there was no point in just continuing, keeping going on. What surprised me, one of the, you were constantly shocked by that show, weren't you? But one bit on it was Fujitsu got a billion. I mean, my husband's in that field of computer programs, etc. And he knows every program you've always got problems with it. You're in there fixing the problems all the time. But you couldn't believe they've got £1 billion of our money for that system that was absolutely rubbish. So people are starting, I can see it on Organise, is starting a campaign saying, sign this petition saying, Fujitsu, give us our money back. Now, I absolutely think give us our money back, and they should be paying compensation for all those people that have lost.
Why not?
Financial compensation. At least, yeah.
Well, they've profited, and of course, in addition to the Horizon money, they've also been given more government contracts during this period as well. By other government bodies have said, do you know anyone who does an IT system? Oh, I hear Fujitsu, they're the guys, they know what to do.
Or as Matt Tony
and if you get any
do you know anybody that does an IT system really badly? Because
well, they give you the whole package, Fujitsu. They give you the program. If there's any glitches, they'll also give you the cover-up, so that it doesn't come out till 20 years later.
And they're too big to fail, too big for them to challenge. Oh, we've seen that before, haven't we?
I'm afraid so. What happened to corporate governance? I was thinking about this the other day. I was a bit cynical and thinking, oh, that's what they always do. But there are times when companies behave themselves. For example, if there's a food product that's tainted, or if somebody's been putting poison in the cheese, they immediately go public and they take it all off the shelves.
Yeah.
So sometimes companies do the right thing, or when the door falls off your Boeing airplane, they sometimes say, oops, that didn't work out too well.
I could laugh, but that's not funny, really. It's absolutely horrific. I know.
But they don't always cover up. No. Sometimes you can, of course. But so sometimes corporations behave properly. Of course. But the post office is not one of them.
And that was what was really well done, really beautifully done in that drama. It's shown how the top people are just there they're there to protect the corporation, not to get to the truth of anything. I mean, I know we're naive to think that they've got the truth. It's all really about protect the corporation. We've not done anything wrong. even though it was very obvious that they had done it, and it was quite scary to see Paula, what was her name, her second name?
Venel,
Something
yes,
like that.
yes.
It was quite scary to see that she was getting the emails to say, right, so how can I say that we didn't know this? And you think, oh my, and this is a lady who was just about to be made a bishop, wasn't she, in 2017? The Archbishop.
I don't know. I was surprised to find that she was in the Holy Orders.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
it. And they were
how
about
far that went.
to make her a bishop,
Was she
but
really?
maybe not now.
Allegedly, that's not news for Scotland's opinion.
Definitely not.
Now, just before we move on, just before we wind up for today, what do you think about the role of drama? I know you're interested
Yes,
in drama.
very much so. Well, I desperately want them to take on the Waspie case now, Little Gem, but I think they've been inundated by Waspie women saying, please take on that case. Women who were denied their pension at 60, now waiting to 66 till they get their state pension, which for many women, that's all the pension they have because they never got any. They never were working in fields where they could get private pension. And that affects nearly 4 million of us in this country. So that would be great if they took on that drama, because it seems to be like, Ken Loach's Cathy Come Home. It caused all this sensation about, isn't it awful, these families being made homeless. It seems to be that when you put a drama out there and everybody's shocked by it, you do get some political movement on it, yeah. I mean, because it's not like the government didn't know about the post office scandal. Of course they have known about it, but suddenly there's people jumping up, like even Ed Holmes, like all sorts of people jumping in there saying, we got to do something now, we've got to support this, because what do they reckon? 15 million people watched Mr. Bates versus the Post Office and thought that is unbelievably evil that's happened to these people, as it indeed it was. 20 years of fighting for some sort of justice. And there is obviously people on Facebook saying all the other cases for justice, and absolutely true. But I mean, we have seen drama influence in so many other cases as well, haven't we? Yeah. To me, what we need though to think about is how do we fund our drama? Like this, coming from Thatcher's idea of all drama should really just be funded by the people that go, the theatres who decide, and they're choosing very sort of like unchallenging drama, maybe, another version of Cats or another version of The Lion King or whatever. So sort of like our challenging drama is missing because it's not getting the government funding that it gets. And actors need to make a living, writers need to make a living. The gas man doesn't allow you to pay in artistic endeavours. You have to pay with money, so they have to be paid, and we are missing that. We're missing that from our theatres and things because we are so short of funding. I mean, personally, I put out a play. We had no funding on the Waspie issue. I tried to get funding to tour it all over Scotland. Lots of places in Scotland were very interested in our play, but we could not get any government funding. It was impossible to get it. So if we keep doing that with our art, then all we'll get is art, which is decided by a few people at the top. They're going to decide the money to put into it, and we won't get people's stories like this. But I mean, Little Gem, that's the company behind Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. Fantastic company for doing this kind of thing, for putting out ordinary people's stories. And like you said, it'll be a problem because like Netflix won't pick up that story. Maybe they will. I'm not sure, because it's such a powerful drama, beautifully done. They might do. So the issue is who funds these things. I don't know how they get their funding, Little Gem. I hope it continues.
Yeah, back at home, Creative Scotland was the subject of debate in the Scottish Parliament this week, with the opposition's accusing the Scottish Government of cutting their funding.
Yes, it has.
So, of course, I think it was Angus Robson said, we are giving it millions. But that's always what happens when you get a debate about money. You've cut it. No, we haven't. We're putting more in. But not when you take inflation into account. So,
no.
But anyway,
the Tron theatres had their funding cut dramatically. Yeah.
So that definitely is a cut.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Not just inflation. Yeah. But on that, I'll just finish on the note on arts and what's going on in Scotland's creative sector. Of course, we're in Glasgow, and I'm sure there's loads of things happening around the country. Tell us, please. But of course, the big thing that happens in January is Celtic Connections.
Yeah, indeed.
So that whole series of concerts and workshops and events kicks off on the 18th of January next week. So I've booked tickets to go to a couple of events, and I'm going to see, what am I going to see this year? Oh yeah, the amazing guitar player Tommy Emmanuel. We booked tickets to see him. And also I just found out yesterday Molly Tuttle is on that bill as well. Molly Tuttle's an American flat-picking guitarist. She's incredibly skilled.
Yep.
I sometimes pick the guitar, but I'll probably give up after seeing these two next week. Now,
Richard Thompson's son, I can't remember his first name, but he's playing at the concert hall. Yeah, I believe. I mean, there is the whole thing about Celtic Connections. It's absolutely amazing and wonderful, but there's a wee bit concerned about some Glasgow musicians feel that they could be using. We have so many skilled musicians in Glasgow and Scotland, and maybe some of them are missing out on the Celtic Connections. The Celtic Connections, actually, opportunities that. Although some people have said, like John McMustard, he said he loves it and he enjoys a few opportunities.
I saw his on stage a couple of years ago, actually, at the Fruit Market.
Yeah, it's kind of fabulous. I've noticed a post on Facebook with a band who got a gig in Celtic Connections. A person who's got a gig trying to recruit a band quickly in the Glasgow Edinburgh area. So you do think,
Oh, I see.
well, shouldn't you have your band in place before you?
Right, so I was looking for a drummer and a bass player.
Well, yeah, that kind of thing, yeah. But why not? Why not? It certainly is an enjoyable thing and it brightens up our Januaries. But of course, we've also got Burns Night next week. And we've got the wonderful Bernadette Collier on at the Woodside pub in Maryhill Road. It's not a Burns Night. She always runs a Thursday night. Fabulous. She's been running it for some time. Come along. Folk, I'm going to call it folk night, but it's not really. It's folk, blues, anything. Music night. Come along and play. And she said there'll probably be a Burns theme happening next Thursday. Also, the Panopticon, is that what it's called? The Britannia Panopticon.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's got on Saturday, it's got a Burns night.
That this Saturday, the 13th?
No, not this Saturday, 27th Saturday.
Oh, it's in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. Burns Night at the Panopticon, 27th of January, 7 p.m. Contact them. You can contact them, the Britannia Panopticon Music Hall, the oldest surviving music hall. Is that right?
I believe, yeah. It was empty for a while,
Yes.
so somebody's done it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is an old traditional music hall.
In the heart of Glasgow.
Right in the middle of Glasgow.
Absolutely. It's sort of like Tron Gateway. That's the way it is. And they've got live music, poetry, whiskey, comedy, prizes. It's £14 or £12 a tickets. You can get them on the Facebook page, the Britannia Panopticon Music Hall Facebook page, if you want to. We might have a wee conversation with them at some point about the Panopticon and how they're trying to keep it going.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. Let's do that. You know some of them, so let's get in touch and see if we can get them on and have a blab. Right, Jeanette, I think we'll just wind this up just now, and that for folk of listening, I think that's enough. So that's it for News for Scotland for this week. And so from me, Hugh Stewart, and from Jeanette Hill, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye now. Bye.
News for Scotland is a new podcast for people anywhere interested in Scottish news, politics, arts and current affairs. We're a not-for-profit company based in Glasgow, set up at the tail end of 2023. If you want to help us grow, please talk to us. Email info@newsforscotland.org or use our Facebook page, and we're also on YouTube. Give us a comment. News for Scotland, news where we are.